Hi everyone, I'm Jack Stratton, a Rethink Retail top retail expert, and I am delighted to be your host for today's session. Today is a really, really interesting session with three just brilliant leaders. We're diving into a topic that I think is really important for retail, all about scaling and adapting in a fast-moving environment, specifically how to make the right tech choices to stay agile and innovative in-store and online, especially in fast-growing environments. So those three leaders I've already mentioned. I'm joined by Craig Hewitt, who is the COO at the iconic retailer, The Paper Store. Craig's actually sat in the back of a store that is about to open, which is really exciting. Joe Corbin, CEO at JumpMind, and Ram Venkataraman, the CEO at Kibo. Hey guys, so nice to see you.
Hey, Jack.
We'll start with Craig, I think. Craig, so, just to give a sense to everyone, after what I think is just over 60 years in business, with the Paper Store. The Paper Store, is growing. You said, 3 stores opening in the Midwest in the next couple of weeks. Massive opportunities digitally. It's such a brilliant and exciting time for the business. With the nature of the webinar topic in mind, I wanted to kick off with this question. What kinds of operational and transformational changes have you been making in recent years to try and stay relevant and competitive and really put you in the right position in order to grow in the coming years as you're planning to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about this today. As a growing retailer, like any retailer, the Paper Store, Uncharted, we are not special in this space. Every retailer is competing in the market, competing for sales, driving traffic into our stores, and our technology advancement shouldn't be any different. When we talk about agility in retail, people somewhat assume it means compromise. Moving faster gives up something in the process, but retail and what our consumers are expecting are moving faster than we can evolve our technology. So agility for us and about advancement is really about our evolution. We're evolving our brand, we're evolving our product mix, we're evolving to what our consumers need, and our technology stack is being looked at and managed in the exact same mindset. Our technology, our technologists, our partners, everyone that we have involved in it is with the single focus of how we're improving our retail brand and applying the technology that we need to do so. Technology doesn't stand still. And we've been over the last 3 years moving away from the monolithic, fully SaaS hosted one solution to a more best in breed solution, because the needs in retail and our consumers are changing just as fast, and you can't move a more monolithic system as quickly. Consumers' expectations are changing overnight. Retail technology needs are changing overnight, and the ability to be able to adapt and change as quickly with the technology and the partners is equally as important to what you're doing with your brand.
It's really interesting. I mean, you've touched on really the key point, and I think where we'll bring in Craig and Ram here. But essentially, you've moved from that more traditional single platform vendor doing the end-to-end thing to this best-in-class composable setup that appears to be really working already, and is a key part of your growth. So really, I think I'll put to all of you, and maybe we'll go to Joe first. Actually, what I think, because in some cases it still maybe is right for certain retailers or brands in certain sectors or certain sizes to go that kind of more monolithic route. I don't know. Your expertise is much bigger than me, but what are the biggest considerations for brands and retailers deciding between these two routes and trying to figure out which way to go, composable and monolithic? Really interested in your 3 separate views on how to make those decisions. Joe, we'll start with you and then go to Ram, and then I'll bring it back to Craig.
Sure. Yeah, no, great question. I think it's interesting, Jack. I think, we've really seen retail tech, as kind of Craig illustrated, go from this best of breed approach to a platform-based approach and maybe back to more composable best of breed. And I think what's really clear is while platforms, can be really good for vendors in a lot of cases, it's not always the same thing for the retailer, because that tech that can be sold, initially is cutting edge and latest and greatest and all that kind of stuff is one thing, but then over time it ages and the retailer's stuck with a legacy system that in very key areas of their business can be necessary to adapt or change, and then it's very difficult to pull them apart. So when you're on that single platform from a single vendor, I think we think that you miss out an opportunity really to think about your store associate and their experience, or your customer and their experience differently. So I think when you're kind of trying to make that decision between, should I go with a single platform, more monolithic in the way it operates and looks, or should I look to compose my future solutions by bringing in best of breed, technologies? I think it's all about thinking about the future, right? You want to look at technology, that really doesn't hold you back from your ability to, as Craig is doing with the paper store, shifting their business, right? They're changing the product mix, as he talked about, trying new brand experiences. So as that naturally happens in your retail environment, you want to have technology that enables that, not inhibits it.
Ram, bringing in the Kibo perspective on this, what's your view when it comes to a brand making this decision from your side of things, and with that Kibo lens and obviously the great stuff you do from a sort of unified commerce point of view?
Yeah, just adding on to what Joe was talking about. I think as you think about it, retailers, when they choose these monolithic approaches, are kind of making these big bets on one vendor from an innovation perspective, right? It's hard for any vendor in today's day and age at the pace at which things are changing. To Craig's point, customer and shopper expectations are changing. It's very, very difficult for monolithic platform businesses to kind of innovate across the entire spectrum of capabilities. So they kind of choose areas that they think is critical for their business. Going down the best of breed approach, to Joe's point, is like, obviously you can find the capabilities from multiple vendors, compose them together, and kind of bring those solutions for our clients and for retailers specifically. The other part is vendor lock-in, which is obviously a big problem for retailers. You don't want to be locked in on a 10-year journey and go through this massive replatforming exercise. So having the ability to pick and choose, and what I call decomposability, so composition of best in breed solution is important, but to be able to rip it apart and add a new capability, maybe a different search engine, maybe a different CMS, maybe capabilities that one vendor provides, and being able to replace those. Reducing that vendor lock-in capability obviously is an extremely important discussion that retailers have. And then finally, I think about it like when you buy these big monolithic platforms, we all see shelfware. There's a ton of shelfware. You pay for a lot of these things that you rarely use. Again, going down these best of breed approaches, you can pick the right solutions, right capabilities that your business needs. And as Craig opens more stores, his business is going to evolve. He might see other opportunities to compose a solution and his tech stack differently. He will have those choices versus being locked in with shelfware that's sitting there for years to come, and it's going to have a massive replatforming exercise.
Craig, I'm gonna ask a dumb question because I feel like I can do that. Ram and Joe aren't going to ask dumb questions because they're smart and they know what they're talking about here. I'm going to be the dumb guy. From that composable point of view and how you switched to that, are you then, when you first started doing this, actually, did you start kind of quite simple and small then? Was that the view that actually you didn't join loads of components straight away, but was it that you could just start with a few components and go, right, let's just get going and then we can add things as we grow? Is that sort of the idea?
Yeah, it's definitely part of the equation. I think part of it is getting your organization and your technologists within your organization to really listen to, again, what the business is going to need. What does the business look like today? What's it going to look like in 3 years? If we're trying to solve what we need in 5, 7 years, it's going to change faster than us trying to build it in there. So we took an approach of starting with one of the solutions. But the first one you start with, I would say, is the best and the hardest to do all at the same time, because it's not just about picking when you want to go this route, the necessarily composable software that's solving the need. It is also about the vendor and being aligned with what they're doing with their product, how they believe in it, what they see. Are their vision in the retail technology landscape going to match? How are they as a partner? How are they developing? And when you find some really good partners, which is a key component to this, to start working with, it opens up a lot of possibilities, and you start getting your skill set as a business to not being so burdensome. Or many companies feel like, well, I need a larger IT team. Do I need more developers? Coming from us, a local regional retailer, family owned and run, that's continuing to grow like crazy, we can't afford those big technology teams. And so it doesn't scare us to go towards the solution in starting. But once you start, what it's going to open up for your business and you see the functionality and optionality will force you to actually go quicker. And it doesn't become as scary.
And just because Joe mentioned this a minute ago, and it's always something that I'm really passionate about. Joe was talking about the benefit of composability in terms of staff associates and how that can support them. Could you tell me a bit more about that with you? I mean, how, just for me, I'd love to know, with your setup, how does composability, are there examples of how that really helps your staff, on an everyday basis, actually to be better, to be able to kind of really enhance what they can do in a store?
Yeah, absolutely. So it all starts again with us, with the customer and the employee in our business. So when we set out to do our first journey on this, we chose to go the point of sale route and to take that out of our monolithic solution, break it apart, and start building around it. The intent of it was to create a single source of um, truth, a single source of operation system for our stores to be able to execute all their functions. Now we know in point of sale, it's not going to do every function that's unique to that store or to that brand, but it allows you to be able to build that in the process. So for our stores, we're now down to, across our entire fleet, using 2 applications in the entire store. Our Jump Mind solution with point of sale. We've now integrated all of our digital and e-commerce part of, Endless Aisle, BOPIS in our store in a single solution that our stores can go to operate. So it's saving us on labor. It's a dramatic savings in training. And it also allows us to adapt and change it very quickly. So if, as BOPIS continues to grow and those solutions and needs for our consumers change, we have to be able to change the software to deliver that service to the customer. And so my number one goal was to get to a straightforward solution in our stores that I could build around to serve all of the needs as quickly as it's changing.
That's really great, because I guess then, as I know digital online is a big growth opportunity for you guys as well. As you bring in, say, click and collect stuff, or I don't know, in the future you start looking at certain aspects of different loyalty plays or something with an in-store aspect. This all really comes into its own, because you're adding, in a way, you could be adding more complexity if your tech stack was a bit complicated, but everything's still going to run through this whole thing. So you're not going to frighten your staff. It's just going to be, look,
Correct.
here's some ways we can do more business.
It looks the same, it feels the same, and then we can adjust it very quickly. You bring up a great point, Jack. We're in growing brands. We have 3 banners under our company right now: the Paper Store, Uncharted, and Gifts and More by the Paper Store. And I need technology that serves the needs for each one of those brands. When one of our
Yeah.
brands have a legacy loyalty system that we have to continue to maintain and run, but in our new brand that we're opening in the Midwest, I needed to be able to start building a loyalty program that was customized to this market, all within the same point of sale solution, operating differently and seamlessly for the staff. And we can do that now.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny, I've had some conversations recently with retailers, once or twice, where I sort of got the sense that sometimes they almost weren't doing something that they felt would be really interesting, like some kind of new loyalty setup or whatever, partly because they love the idea, but they look at the tech complexity and what they're going to sort of add, this extra Jenga brick on top
Yeah.
of this Jenga tower that's already looking like it's going to fall over, right? And I think this is the thing, is that I wonder whether a lot of retailers just don't add in these great new things, because I just think this is just another layer of complexity we can't add in. Whereas what's lovely about this is I realize you can really do stuff, because you're not going to add extra stress. It's just adding benefits, adding, something to build.
Yeah, and I think also it does allow you now to test things, to test solutions. You're not locked in for a long contracted period of time, or during the sales cycle, we think it meets everything we need, then we put it in, we do all of this work, and then it may not meet all the needs. This absolutely allows you to test all different solutions that will enhance your business at a pretty easy way to do it, and it's not as expensive as people think it may be to test these different solutions.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a really, really interesting point. And now, maybe specifically to Joe and Ram, Joe, I've seen JumpMind talk before, and I think it's very relevant to this particular case, about how, the technology partnerships you have, and maybe the one with Kibo in particular, you've talked about the kind of better together model, which is really interesting. I'd like to know a bit more about that, but also, what are the benefits of that? If you could explain what you mean by that, but also what are the benefits for retailers when it comes to one of these technology partnerships?
Yeah, I think the really the better together with us and Kibo and just the way that we approach partnerships in general at JumpMine is the first is really kind of something Ram touched on already, which is focus. Like my company is focused on stores. I wake up every morning and I think about stores. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about stores, like as is natural. And I'm sure Craig, you're in that situation from time to time as well. So the idea that I shift my focus and my company's focus and start tackling the same problems or problems that Ram's tackling or someone else, to me doesn't make sense. And that's a real benefit to the retailer that they're working with a technology vendor that is truly, and a partner in this case, that's truly thinking about their store experience all day long. And I'm sure, Ram would say the same thing as it relates to the OMS and the other components in their business. So I think it's kind of like, and Craig has illustrated this, but composability and composing those solutions doesn't necessarily mean complex. And Craig and his team are a perfect example of that. As he mentioned, with the size of their IT organization and the amount of spend they're able to, have in that based upon, them being a growing business. So I think really focus is one of the key areas. The other is like is obvious, as we've talked about a little bit, but it's truly about flexibility. Again, Craig touched on this, and we often look at POS as this single pane of glass. How can I put one thing in front of the associates, and that's what Craig is doing, but that allows Craig and his team and retailers to ultimately create a tailored experience for their associate, who's ultimately going to create a hopefully frictionless experience with their customer. And mix and match, software and services as needed behind the scenes. So if I've got, to Craig's point, a loyalty solution in one banner, but a different one in another, or OMS in this, and all these different things come together, but the associate doesn't know the difference, and it kind of, that flexibility leans into this future-proof concept as well, where you have a solution that I think is ready for today, and that's obviously the point in buying things, but is really also ready for tomorrow, because maybe the loyalty solution in those existing banners that Craig has changes tomorrow, right? Or something's different with that, and we're going to do something different. We want to test something, as Craig was talking. We want to try something new. All of that relies on you having solutions that are built and technology that are built, API first, and really focused on enabling other vendor solutions. And again, Ram touched on this, but it's this idea of vendor lock-in. When you have solutions that are built to be composable, vendor lock-in is not a concept, right? The whole idea is that we expect other vendors to come into play. And then the last thing I'll just say is I think partnership really matters. When I look at how we work with the paper store, when I look at how we're working with Kibo, we really focus things at a partnership level to say, hey, if we're going to do it, it needs to be differentiated and better. It needs to be strategic. So when we look at how we're creating experiences with Kibo, it's truly product level differentiation where we think our two solutions can come together and ultimately provide a better experience for Craig at the paper store and for any other retailer that wants to leverage them.
Yeah, and Ram, I'm sure you would echo much of that. But anything else, kind of to add as well on that point?
I'd say a couple of things that add to that. I think from a partnership point that Joe talked about, it's not a sales handshake, right? It's not like Joe and Ram getting on a phone call and saying, "Hey, let's get a partnership going." Our engineering teams work together, right? I mean, it's a integration that's not owned by a third party. It is not specific for paper store. We will replicate it, to Joe's point, with any other retailer that decides to buy Kibo and JumpMind together, right? It's our engineering teams own it. We'll maintain it. We'll upgrade it. We take the ownership of ensuring that truly the better together message sticks, not only for the customer perspective, but for our engineering teams, right? So as you think about that, right, I think back to composability, the future-proof aspect of it is very, very important. A lot of times these integrations are like a time in a capsule. They're built together at one point and it never gets upgraded. And you go to the next version and it breaks, right? So as Joe and his team innovate on the platform, and Kibo innovates in our platform. We're going to continue to maintain that. And that's why the whole composability story really works, is if the integration is maintained and managed by the software organization between the two vendors and not by some third party in the middle.
Yeah. And Craig, coming back to you, what in your journey so far, and I know it's still, the lovely thing about this is it's still very much happening. That's the whole point. You're still relatively early on in this journey of composability. What so far have been some of the, I don't know if you could share a couple of kind of challenges or learnings that other retailers that are tuning in could really kind of benefit from hearing, just, things that have happened that you think maybe surprised you even.
Sure. So we as a business, and myself personally running, having the opportunity to run some large teams and operations IT in my area, it's going to sound a little cheesy when I say it, but it is about the partnership. A lot of people have the technology. A lot of people have the great development teams and can do all this work. But you have to align yourself with where the relationship, you see the vision of the leadership of those organizations, where they're investing their dollars, and what their commitment is. Better together, maybe a tagline, but it truly, we can all add value to each other. And when you can unlock that with your partners, they can hear you as the retailer of what the need is and then apply it into the technology and be willing to work with each other to solve problems in each other's worlds and environments. It unlocks potential that you have not seen before. So for us, a good learning and a value I live by for many years is the relationship is as important as the technology in which it's delivering. When that relationship is fractured and you don't have that trust and that commitment and that focus, as Joe and Ram were talking about, you lose the relationship a little bit as well, and everyone kind of loses in that process. So advice I would give is look, dig, but the relationship part of it is equally as important, and really honing in on the understanding of where they're not going to be in 5 years or 10 years, but where they're going to be in 18 months, in 3 years, because you have that option if you made the wrong decision to change it. But if you don't, and you have that great partnership like we're trying to build right now, you're secure for a long period of time, and it expands you to be able to add that composability to other areas of the business very quickly. So I would say, and don't be scared by it. I was scared by it. I said, geez, I have to run our own help desk in other areas now. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. We have less work to do now on maintenance and support and things breaking or trying to develop old technology to work the way we need it to. We don't have those problems anymore. So now we can focus our time on actually building a composable stack to meet our needs and not be just trying to maintain or fix all the time. It's actually a breath of fresh air. Our technology teams enjoy it because it's innovative, it's exciting, they're passionate. And when we have that and you have passion, the results are, you can see it in your business.
That's really interesting. And so Joe, Craig said something there, obviously about almost that maybe he initially was expecting that the maintenance thing might be more of an issue, and then actually ends up almost being the opposite. That's really cool. But also, do you see that with other retailers? Is that kind of maybe part of the reason some people don't make that jump? They almost think actually composable is going to be more complicated.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think just the thought of composability is like, oh, I got to bring all these Legos, and all these Legos are different, and all these Legos are complex, and they've got their own, things associated with them, and how am I going to get it to work? And I do think Craig's right. I mean, there's a level of, finding the right partnerships, really being aligned with the company that you're working with. I think Craig and I hopefully have a great relationship. I feel really good about it, and we try and stay aligned and make sure that, his vision is understood by me and our vision is understood by him and his team. And I think that helps, right? That helps mitigate some of the risk of like, oh, I don't want to bring 25 things to the party here. I really just need to solve this problem. So I think you have to be thoughtful about it, right? Because, the worst thing in the world, at least in the storage space, and from my purview, is extended periods of time with multiple pieces of technology running in your stores. So speed to value is really the key. And when you're Craig and you have thousands of devices, right, it can be very disruptive to be in this in-between state for very long. So we kind of say, you got to pick the biggest need and the biggest area of business value that you see, in an individual process, and you need to go attack it. And I think modern technology, tools like the way JumpMind's built and the things Ram has, in his stack are meant to be stood up very, very quickly so that you're not in this infinite loop of work that sees very little value over time and can be, frankly, really hard to convince the business of a light at the end of the tunnel, right? If I'm in a 3-year program before we're going to see any ROI, you can get into year 1.5 and be like, a lot of people start losing their desire for this journey that you all agreed to at the beginning. So we firmly believe, get product live quickly in stores, move quickly to the new platform, right? And you're going to get champions within your business quickly as well.
You mentioned the ROI point there, Joe, and maybe I'll put this to Ram and then I'll go back to you, Joe, and Craig on this, because it's an important point. I always think, just kind of thinking neutrally, people, watching these kind of webinars and reading about, people who basically are looking out into the market and at a point of thinking about whether they switch to composable or just re-platforming full stop, going into, making different decisions. The biggest thing always, I think, is often the people who start to think about these changes aren't necessarily making the final decision. And I always think, they are often sat there thinking, right, I might believe in this, but what do I go to my boss with to say, look, this is going to be a worthy investment. We're going to get ROI on this. So what I would say with this very broadly, and Craig, when I ask you, it'll be more maybe if there's something to share with the paper store specifically, but for Joe and Ram, we'll start with you. What kind of things should those people be saying to their bosses about, the ROI typically when you invest in a composable system? What is it normally that really makes this, a worthwhile kind of financial investment?
Yeah, I mean, so I think some of it is that speed to value that I was just talking about. I think it's about reducing the disruption in your stores, and oftentimes because the legacy stack that a retailer has, in this platform kind of environment that we've been kind of talking about today, I think there's often pent up demand from the business on very specific initiatives that they would like to see, right? Like, I want to provide these journeys to my customers, but I cannot because the technology is limiting me in some way or another. Or I'm providing them, but I'm providing them in a way that is manual or full of friction. And maybe I'm not actually seeing the uplift from an endless aisle experience, as an example, that I would expect. Well, and you find out when you dig into it that it's truly because of the way you're providing that experience, right? It's complex, it's full of friction, and that friction is getting passed directly to the customer. So I feel like, oftentimes that speed as you're moving into that new platform can really help with it, right? And get your value, shown to the business extremely quickly. And then I think it goes back to what we've talked a little bit today about, but it's about the flexibility of it, and that I can see ROI by enabling ongoing enhancements as the market evolves, by having more modern platforms that are, loosely coupled. Ram has a roadmap that he's executing on feverishly. I'm doing the same thing with my team. And, with this loosely coupled approach, he's able to iterate quickly without involvement from my team, and vice versa. When I've got a platform, it's a much more complicated endeavor where I've got to do, months and months, of testing and all these different things that make just innovation much harder to realize, I think.
Yeah, so awesome. I can see so many benefits. Ram, I put the same question to you.
Yes, the way when I talk to CIOs or COs and in those positions, I always talk about changes coming next quarter, right? It's not coming 6 months, 6 years from now, 3 years from now. Next quarter, you're going to need a new payment type. It's a new carrier you're going to integrate with, a new loyalty partner you're going to integrate with. So you need, when you talk about ROI, it's not ROI about that first implementation you're doing, but it's the ROI that keeps coming after that. We've talked about agility. Craig mentioned agility being a critical part of how he thinks about systems in general. Speed to market, super important from that perspective. So it's the ROI not on the initial implementation, but how you think about customer journey as you go through this continuous evolution, that shopper expectations are changing on a regular basis, and how you can address that in the platform solution that you have, right? It's all that goes into ROI calculations and not just the initial implementation.
Yeah, that feels like a really important point, is that it's not about clear, immediate, hard kind of saving. It's about investing in something that's going to keep giving back because of how it evolves alongside how retail is involved more generally. Craig, I'm sure, and I can see you nodding along. A lot of that you would echo. But is there anything just in, the early stages of this as well, anything specific where you thought, oh, wow, this is already kind of, giving back, maybe thought more than I thought it would?
Yeah, maybe from a little bit different perspective. I agree with everything that Joe and Ram said, and I believe it's not the initial where you start, but it's what you can enhance and what you can add on later that gives you ROI quicker or enhances things, revenue, whatever it's going to be, faster than you would have gotten it to it in a different manner. For us, the question you had asked earlier about, how do you sell it to your boss? And I was thinking back to my team, and for us in our journey, we have a very clear 5-year roadmap as a business. What we want to do, how we want to get there as it relates to our brands, our consumers, our stores, all of that. And what my technology team did is they kind of came from it of the angle of we see the mission, we see what we need to do. And for us to get there and achieve what you're asking, we need to go the composable route. And this is why. So the ROI wasn't necessarily about a dollar ROI. It was about how are we going to achieve our vision and our goal that's been laid out, and we feel that we can achieve it. These are the roadblocks that we're going to have with our current solutions. In order for us to achieve it, we need to go this manner, and that's going to give us an ROI. It was never really about an ROI of that initial system or comparing it to the current cost. It was about, does the investments we're making and going this way meet the business of our vision and where we're going?
Maybe an opportunity now. I was just thinking maybe for all three of you, just to broaden out slightly. So much is kind of changing in retail at the moment, and so quickly, which is a challenge, but also, ultimately what makes all of us enjoy, I think, working in this sector so much. With a lot of that in mind, we'll start with you, Jay. What do you think are the kind of main things retailers should prioritize at the moment from a technology, operations, or customer experience perspective?
Yeah, I mean, so I agree with you. I think so much is changing for retailers, and it's hard oftentimes to figure out where should we put focus. I think, obviously my view on retail has a brick and mortar slant, of course, and I just feel like if you're a brick and mortar retailer, I think you really need to be thinking about your associates. You need to be thinking about how you're enabling them, how you're empowering them. And they are a unique audience. Oftentimes, retailers, obviously, Craig, I'm sure you're doing it. You're hiring for the holidays, right? They've been there for 2 weeks and they're asked to, be really the experience that the customer sees of the paper store as an individual that you've had 2 weeks with, right? So I think the technology can help that associate be a competitive advantage if it's used properly. And I firmly believe, we focus on, again, the associate all day long. And I believe that the associates want to do a great job. They just need to be empowered with technology that can allow them to. So when the experience is full of friction, when it's difficult to figure out, guess what? They have no choice but to pass that friction on to your customers. And I think we've seen that in Craig's experience, right? As they've gotten onto a platform that's modern, I think they have, store associates. You could obviously speak to this, Craig, of course, but store associates that aren't having to go through, a half-day session on training and all these sorts of things that obviously increase cost for Craig and his business if you have to do that. But more importantly, or maybe equally as important, said a different way, is if it's challenging, the journey that you think that your associates are providing to their customers, they're probably not doing it, right? Because it's just kind of too hard to figure it out. So I think really doubling down on the associate is very, very, very important. And we've talked about partnership, quite a bit today, and how I think important that can be, as you look to prioritize things and who you work with. Technology, I'm not going to say that it's fully table stakes across the board. I think we feel like we do some very differentiated things ourselves. But at the end of the day, you can work with a lot of different companies. I think it's super important to find people that you feel passionate about, that are passionate about your business. And on that same kind of note, as much as we love Craig and the team at the paper store, I think what's really important for him, and we hope to maintain an extremely long working relationship, and we've worked together for a number of years already. But if in a couple of years, Craig needs to move on and he needs to do something in POS differently, or in promotions, or in inventory, and all the different areas we work together, they can do that, right? And they can do that without disrupting the other components in their critical systems, their critical tech stack, whether it's OMS or e-commerce or merchandising, all these sorts of things. And I think that's when you think about the investments you want to make in your business, I think that's the mindset that you need to have is how can I kind of limit the disruption that would occur with individual solutions being popped in and out of kind of the technical architecture that you put forward?
Yeah, I really love that, Joe, because I'm well aware from previous chats with you that you have, you have that your career started on the retail side, on the store side, actually, and I think, I mean, I can, because again, I'm neutral, I can have this opinion. I think that's what really makes what you do and the way that you look at technology really great, because I think it's completely instinctive for you to think people first, store first, retail first. And I think it's really, really invaluable because I know you get the tech and you're great at tech, but actually, I think you're only interested in the technology so far as it can serve that human need, right? First and foremost, the staff member. And if you get that right, the customer's going to have a great time. So I love that way of looking at it. I think it's awesome. Ram, I put the same question to you. What should retailers be prioritizing in terms of tech ops or anything else?
Yeah, so the way we think about it is obviously slightly differently than the way Joe thinks about it. We
Of course.
come from the shopper's perspective, right? In terms of, hey, from a retailer perspective, how are you optimizing the customer experience, right? Ultimately, that's what it is going to be, especially in this omni-channel journey that we live in, with POS and all of the other different fulfillment types that you have. So we prioritize and, we ask our retailers to prioritize inventory visibility. Obviously, that is a very critical aspect in terms of driving conversion at checkout. Being able to deliver, real-time inventory across stores, warehouses, DCs, whatever be the case, drop shippers, so on and so forth, right? So the customer experience in our mind comes from, strong visibility of inventory across all the channels or the inventory locations that the retailer has. Secondly, from the operations perspective, it's the profitable fulfillment, right? It's figuring out the right location to fulfill it. How do you fulfill it in the right way, in the most timely way, deliver the product in the best possible shipping cost from an experience perspective? Those are all very, very critical things that a retailer needs to prioritize, right? So from a CX perspective, it's always about inventory in our mind in terms of, you can have the best site if you cannot produce that promise to the shopper in time and then deliver that in a most profitable way. Obviously, retailers are not going to be successful in that. And that's been our kind of a partnership with the paper store and then an integration with, if you will, with JumpMind as orders coming into our system, making that available and providing that best store associate experience that Joe talks about in terms of fulfilling those products in store.
It's really great that your answer was so different to Joe's, because that kind of makes the partnership point quite beautifully, right? You have a completely different view of this, but actually it's not different. It's entirely complementary. It's like
it's
you've
the
got both.
Yeah,
You've got both halves of things instinctively, and it just fits together beautifully. I like that. It's as if it was perfectly planned, but it wasn't. It's happened naturally. Craig, finally, with you, and I mean, this obviously would likely be from your experience from the paper store in terms of what to prioritize, but I'll also allow you just to, look at retail more broadly. What do you think are the big ticket items people should be prioritizing?
Sure. So for us, we're a very heavy brick and mortar retailer. We believe in it. To have that experience, you kind of have to come in our stores, but we're also growing our brand, growing our reach, growing our markets, and so having that seamless online interaction and building that path for our consumer is equally as important. But it's all about how it culminates together and makes it frictionless for the consumer first and foremost, but then the employee has to be second to that, because if the employee, whether they're online or in the store, wherever they are, if their technology isn't easy, isn't delivering exactly what they need to the consumer in that moment, we've lost them. And for us, when I talk about partnership, between what Ram and Joe just said, that's what makes that partnership so great. They're coming at it from different angles, and both those solutions and their thought process and how they're looking at it are aligned with our vision. So it naturally comes together, and it unlocks things that you wouldn't think were able to be unlocked by what we're doing.
And what's cool, I mean, I'm just thinking this off the top of my head, but you're with Uncharted, we were talking about earlier, you're expanding more west, and as you've been talking about, opening stores in the Midwest, which is great. And I'm guessing there's probably some locations where actually the great thing is that belief and that kind of DNA of brick and mortar actually is going to be this great platform for online for you, because what you're going to have, and from what I've seen of the paper store, I mean, these are mini department stores, they're marketplaces. You're actually selling massive range of brands, massive range of products. It's a beautiful setup for online fulfillment, for click and collect. As that grows, I mean, it really is. The kind of setup that a lot of brands would dream of. So I think that's really, really cool as you expand. That actually that belief in brick and mortar as a byproduct is going to be such a good base for that.
Absolutely. We want to bring them in, we want to experience it, and then we want to unlock our web business to anyone who wants to see it now that they've experienced. You can choose how you want to shop, when you want to shop, what goods, and we're not also locked into having exactly the same product selections in all stores, but we have it open to anyone across the fleet that wants to buy it. So it's pretty amazing to specialize our product mix regionally by market, but still have the full span seamlessly. One source of truth for inventory. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you're going to have real kind of fluidity, wherever you are. Yeah, that's really, really great. Well, I think we've probably reached time for this. As much as I feel like the three of you could easily continue talking about these subjects pretty much endlessly, and I definitely could, because there's nothing I enjoy more than, what is it, we said more than 60-year-old retailer growing across the US, multi-product, multi-brand, in a time where, we're told physical stores are supposed to be struggling. And yet there are so many examples where it's thriving, just like yours, Craig. So really, I think we'll finish on that positive note. So thank you so much to all three of you for your thoughts and contributions. It's been so interesting chatting, learning from all of you. Please, check out, if you want to find out more about any of these individuals or the brands, you can just head to the Rethink Retail page, learn more about this podcast, learn about others. Follow Craig, Joe, and Ram on LinkedIn as well. Ram, Joe, good luck with everything in the near future. Craig, good luck with the store openings. I hope at some point I'll be able to come out to a paper store. I'd love to go and see one. Sounds like my kind of environment. So yeah, best of luck with everything, and thank you so much for tuning in. Cheers, guys.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.